Good evening, hello everybody, and welcome into DogZone. Andy McCook here to take you through tonight's show, and you got to love a little bit of puppy action at the top of the show there, don't you? They're very cute when they're young greyhound puppies, and if only they could stay that way, life would be much easier. We're going to head to Mark Rosanowski. Rozo, thank you for joining us here on the show, and just so you know, I'm going to put a bow on one of those and send it up for Marco for Christmas.
Well, I'm sure my rising 7-year-old would appreciate that. As you say, Andy, they're extremely cute. I find them a very attractive, elegant animal as an adult as well, and they just happen to be canine athletes too. They're fantastic with children in the main. Every breed of dog has its rogue, of course, but I've certainly had adult greyhounds as pets and in the backyard, and they're just wonderful with not only small children, but they can, of course, be trained to live with small, fluffy animals as well. Christmas Day, it's an interesting one for trainers, isn't it? Because every day is the same. The greyhounds still need to be fed, they still need to be looked after, and of course they are. And we have our biggest meeting of the season up and around the Waikato area, Christmas Eve, a dual code, and then the final of said features a week later. So it's still a busy time for most people in the game.
It never gets any quieter, there's no doubt about that. I know 7:30 at our place on Christmas morning, the dogs are still barking and we still need to go and tend to them, so there'll be no sleeping at Christmas morning out at Rockwood Lodge. It's been a relatively quiet week in greyhound racing, really. One of the biggest announcements to come out of New Zealand, though, was the shock return of Bago Bye Bye to Australia, and of course, we know him as the Group 1 New Zealand Cup winner. Here's a look at his stats. He had 13 starts here in the country for 10 wins and a minor placing. He was, of course, victorious in the Group 1 New Zealand Cup. And, Roz, I spoke to Dave yesterday, obviously shocked and not happy about the return of this dog to Australia. He's going to leave a big hole in the Fahey team, and it's just a decision that doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It's a little bit bewildering on the face of it, isn't it, Andy? I mean, look, we don't have Greg Watts here to talk about it and as to the reasons, but in Queensland, there is more money coming in to the state with some recent changes that were made there, and they're trying to keep pace, obviously, with Victoria and New South Wales. And so there's going to be some really good stakes for Bago Bye Bye to run for. Now, here he is, running for our biggest stake in New Zealand. $125,000 in the New Zealand Cup. He's in the red rug. He's sitting third. Very professional performance from a dog who hasn't had a great deal of starts. He's run through to the lead there, kicked out to score. On top of that, Andy, he has been responsible for not only just the track record at Addington Raceway, but also the second fastest time, which he set during that series of the New Zealand Cup. So his name is effectively indelible. For the short term, he's going to be the track record holder, and that actually may not be that short a term because he does have the 2 fastest times, and although we've had some stunning dogs, stunning times around Addington this year, he really has set a decent mark. Look, he was no duffer in Queensland, obviously. He won first up at Ipswich over 520 metres. He then went to Sandown for the Launching Pad Series. He ran 4th in a heat and 4th in a semi-final and didn't progress further than that. His last 3 races in Queensland were wins. In Brisbane, they were over 600 metres. But he was a little bit dodgy. And that meant that when he came out here, Andy, of course, he could finish onto the lure, which we do here in New Zealand, which they don't do in Australia, where they run into a catching pen. And that really switched him on, like it does for a whole lot of greyhounds. And Jean and Dave Fahey did a magnificent job with this dog to go through and take him to another New Zealand Cup success for them. And there's still some good races coming up here. And my fear, Andy, is that he will go back to Queensland, and that after a few runs there where he gets little to no reward at the end of a race running into a catching pen, he might revert back to his old ways. He's probably going to be racing a stronger class of dog, and I just hope this dog doesn't drift into obscurity, because he's far better than that, and he's far more important than that to us here in New Zealand.
He certainly is, and gee, you'd have to think, I know the money's not as good over here, but geez, he's got the Hat-Trick Classic coming up, the Auckland Cup after that, obviously, and Rosso, he would have gone around in races like that as a $2.50 favourite, you would imagine, unless something went horribly wrong with him in the heats. And we had a little bit of a chat about it last night. You win a race that's worth 40,000 is better than running last in a race worth 120.
Well, that's a fact. I mean, look, I'll be really interested to monitor his progress over there, and hopefully for Greg, things will work out well and that maybe he can rip off a decent race over in that state. But it just seemed that he was so settled here, and despite what happened in the Spion Rose, well, that's just bad racing luck. And then at Addington last week as well, when you get to the top grade, you don't necessarily have to take your turn, because Bago Bye Bye certainly didn't do that. But when you have bad luck in a race, you're not likely to recover from it. But it seemed like he had some more big wins in store for him, and maybe even a Greyhound of the Year title, which may not mean that much to an Australian. But real shame for him to go. I mean, I feel really sorry for Jean and Dave Fahey and the team there, because they couldn't have done any more with this Greyhound than what they did. Fantastic achievement, what they managed. And I guess, Andy, do we go back to the old adage, it's better to have loved and lost than to not have loved at all. And Jean and Dave Fahey were at least able to post another New Zealand Cup win with this dog and have his name still there in the race book as the track record holder at Addington, which, as I say, that may last for some time.
It certainly looks like it will last for some time. That run was unbelievable that night, and yeah, it's going to take something pretty special to beat his track record here at Addington. There is no doubt about that. So yeah, great shame for the Fahey team and for New Zealand as a whole to lose a greyhound of his calibre back to Australia. Talking about greyhounds with a high calibre, we've seen a couple of young greyhounds hit the track in recent months that we've been a little bit too busy to chat about. We've got a little bit of time on the show tonight, so the first one we're going to have a look at is Amarini. He is prepared by Ben Craig. He's had only been beaten once in a short career to date. He's had nice starts for 8 wins. Rosso, this is him winning at Wanganui, 30-27 in a New Zealand Racing Series final, and this was a best of the day on a night that had Class 5 animals going around.
It's really interesting to watch this dog's progression and being able to travel to different tracks, Andy, and just to operate instantly on those, and just looks a real professional, Amarini. And that obviously is critical when you're running down on the grades and you're inexperienced. This particular day here, Andy, is a really slow track, wet day testing. The times were really slow. This dog overcame that, probably never experienced anything like this before, just went out, did the job again, and ran faster than Ask King Jeff, who ran the open grade that day. So just to give you an indication of how good this dog is, coming to a track like this and delivering again in style.
Very nice animal, there's no doubt about that. And we're going to take you now to have a look at the only time he's been beaten. Now, this was in the New Zealand Racing Series final over the 450 at Manawatu, and you see him straight off the boxes there. Rosso, box number 3, comes out awkward, he slipped, and that's the only time he's been defeated in what has been an otherwise professional short career.
And Andy, I suspect this is my fault. Because I was saying just what a little professional this dog is. And then obviously that happened, and those things can happen, and they can happen to more experienced dogs than Amarini is. And that was a nice field. The novices, there were dogs from around the country there. It was won by the Canterbury Kennels of Robin Wales, and there was no second opportunities there. I guess though, how you measure that, Andy, is how well does a dog bounce back from that, because that can be something that crushes the confidence a little bit. Well, you're about to show us how well that dog can bounce back from that.
Yeah, he's bounced back with 2 very nice wins. Now, this is his latest win here off box number 2. This is at Auckland on Sunday, 30-48 he clocked here. And again, Rosso, it's best of the day times, and there was a couple of nice greyhounds, Cameo Sid and Ramblin' On, that went around this day, and they couldn't run quicker than this bloke. So, geez, he's got a big future in front of him, and you have to think races like the Derby and the Waikato Classic are going to be right up his alley.
Well, for Ben and Lisa Craik, it's an exciting time with a dog like this. Ben, of course, been around for a long time, but you never get tired of exciting young greyhounds, and the Just Jordana Syndicate are across the board winning races, having fun. Catch a Fire, the dam of Amarini, just forgotten how fast she actually was. As a Class 1, Andy, she came to Hattrick and ran a 29.79, and she made a couple of Group 1 finals at Hattrick Raceway. Ultimately, she won 10 races, 49 starts, so she wasn't over-raced, and now she's able to pass on some of her ability to her progeny. Amarini's not a loner in being a talent, but Amarini is the one who really stands out with the record that he's putting together now.
Another handy youngster that we have seen start to hit the tracks in recent months has been from the CD kennels of Lisa Cole. It is Big Time Pete, and G. Rozzo on Monday at Manawatu, we saw something pretty special from him. He broke the track record.
This was over 410 metres, and it's a relatively new distance, Andy, and we're going to talk about the 410 metre distances and race distances in general at the Manawatu Raceway shortly, because they have been trialling this 410 metres as the only sprint distance for the last 6 weeks. And the week before, kennelmate Big Time Basher had clocked 23.17, and look, we know he's Class 5 capable and a fast dog, Big Time Basher, but there was kind of some question marks as to, gee, because some of the timings around the 410 metres didn't seem quite right, and then he came out with that. But the club took it to our friends at Form Pro and said, analyse this for us. Form Pro came back and said, look, this is accurate. This is 23.17. This can be ratified as a record. And so it was, but it only lasted 7 days because out came Big Time Pete. And he came back from an injury and did that. And not only that, because in our chat with Paul Freeman, we'll hear about how difficult it's been to win from outside boxes over the 410 metres. Well, Big Time Basher actually won again on Monday and did it from box 8, and Corbo Meza won off box 7 the week before, and Big Time Pete did that. So it's not impossible, but it hasn't been all that easy. But he was brilliant. The conditions were good. It was nice and warm. It was mid-20s, relatively still. But this dog has shown us an engine right from the outset with some really fast times, particularly at Hattrick, but also over the 375 metres at Manawatu, and then with that record, outstanding. Now, out of Kissing Gwyneth, now all of her races were over the middle distance, and Big Time Pete had to be scratched. When he got injured, he was nominated for a 520 metre race, so we haven't seen him over the middle distance yet, but ultimately we will. He's in a sprint this coming Friday night. Out of Kissing Gwyneth, who had a remarkably similar record to Catch a Fire, who I talked about earlier. Catch a Fire had won 10 from 49, 9 from 43 for Kissing Gwyneth, and she was also a Group 1 finalist, and in the New Zealand Breeders' Stakes, she fell in that after having run second to Kill Churn, who ultimately won the final. And Catch a Fire was also a New Zealand Breeders' finalist. So a couple of really nice young dogs to watch over the next few weeks and the season ahead, given their age.
Exactly, they certainly have a bright future ahead of them, and gee, it's going to make things interesting for races like the Derby and the Classic, and yeah, dogs like Diddley into the mix. Gee, it's just exciting for especially the Derby. That's in 3 or 4 months' time. We're going to head to a break now on DogZone. On the other side, we catch up with Palmerston North Greyhound Racing Club President Paul Freeman.
I knew from the first time I stayed for a long time, 'cause I like me better when I'm with you. I don't know what it is, but I got that feeling.
Welcome back into DogZone. Well, at the Manawatu, they have been trialling moving the 375 metre back and just having the 410 metre start point. And Rozzo, that trial's gone for 6 weeks, and you were able to catch up with Paul Freeman and have a little bit of a chat about that last week.
Yeah, and Andy, I thought it was quite important that we did because there's quite a difference between 375 metres and 410 metres for some dogs in particular, and really wanted to find out just how has it changed the style of racing, if it has at all, and also there had been some issues around the times, were they accurate, etc. So I think beyond just what's going to happen in the future, there are a few questions that probably need to be asked and answered, and Paul was kind enough to give us his time, and we can have a listen at that and maybe even think about some of the race distances that we run around the country as well, because we just kind of go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. But certainly at the Manawatu Raceway, they've been thinking fairly hard about what they should be doing in terms of the future of the sport as much as anything, I suppose.
Well, let's take this opportunity now to head to the man himself, Mr. Paul Freeman.
Paul, let's go straight to the outcome. What has been the outcome of the 410 metre trial?
The injury reports obviously dropped dramatically, less injuries. There's been a few little teething issues with it, but and most of the participants haven't been scared to voice their opinion, and quite a mixed report.
Well, we've had 6 weeks of it, so I guess everyone's had the opportunity to get a real look at it. So what are the mixed reports? What are the pros? What are the cons?
Some of the trainers don't think it's cleaner racing when it comes to the bend. Obviously it's harder when you've got dogs going faster coming to a bend. Even the 457, there's pile-ups in the bend, but I think some of them are enjoying a straighter run to the bend as from the 375, where the boxes are angled down, sort of forcing dogs to the bend.
What issues has the 410 metre starting point sort of brought up in terms of the boxes and maybe the box statistics? Is it hard to win from the outside, for example?
Well, we're lucky enough to have the Form Pro team do an analytic report over the 6 weeks. I know the core sample was not as great as the 375, but there is a clear showing in the statistics that the best boxes are in the middle boxes, and the other winning boxes, being 1 and 2, are similar, but obviously you want to draw in the middle on these 410s thus far.
and has it been tough to win from out wide, full stop?
In my view, I think it has been tough, but this report that David's done is tremendous, and one of the highlights that it does say is the percentage of dogs winning from the back is a lot greater than the 375. Before, if you led over 375, you would normally win. Now that's not the case.
And do you see that as a good thing?
Well, it's cleaner, fairer racing. Obviously now in New Zealand there's lots of races using the number 2 or 3, 200, 300, 400 is a little bit different. So
we've had some interest around the timing of the races, and a couple of meetings. It seems that the times have been slow, especially relative to the 457 metres. Has there been some issues with the actual timing, gear, the equipment?
Yes, there has been some big issues. The first week of the trial, I can say the times were correct. We just had to do a bit of tentative work around the starting boxes, and there was a bit of a gap at the front where the one dog could get its paw through. So in changing the configuration of the boxes, it appears to have affected the timing dramatically, and maybe last week we were back to correct times, but sort of the last 2 or 3 weeks we had checks done on the times, and they were grossly out. Some races were even out by half of a second.
But looking to last Monday, when there was a track record set, and that was Big Time Basher in a Class 3 race, but we know he's Class 5 capable and a fast dog. What has been the ratification around that? You've had Form Pro look into it. The 23.17, does it stack up?
Going with Form Pro, it does stack up. They looked at all the races of the day, and their margin of error is 0.02, and they can verify that track record is correct.
So we go with that track record, Big Time Basher 23.17 going forward?
We do, yes.
So what are we likely to have now? We've had the 6 weeks of the trial, but I see that you've been calling for nominations for the 375 metres again. So what's the likely future, do you think, of the sprints here?
Well, we went to the club, we went to the participants and asked them to sign off on this trial, and they have. So obviously we're respecting their views, and obviously collation of the information and discussion. We always said from the start that we would try the 410, but we're open to a 400, any other distance, as long as the boxes are on the track. So obviously there's a fair bit of work to go through, because if we were to go to another distance other than 375, we'd probably want it to be perfect and iron out all the cobwebs that we've got. Obviously there's been quite a few cobwebs.
There's still a little bit of wait and see about it, but you are looking to try and find the cleanest possible racing for that, for your sprinters.
We are. I know GRNZ are very hopeful that everyone will go with the 410. Like I said, everyone's got a view. I like the racing too, but it's difficult when we've got a lot of trainers in the area that have only have a couple of dogs, and some of those dogs aren't suited to the 410. So it's hard to sort of try and get an impartial view of most of the trainers.
There's also been a little bit of controversy in the past around the distance racing here, and you introduced the 660 metres. The 766, there doesn't seem to be many nominations for them, so we don't get the races there. But so you're looking for something potentially in between, around about a 720?
Well, we actually have approval from Greyhound Racing New Zealand Board for a 720 start, and we're actually surveyed on Friday. Obviously going forward with New Zealand being part of the Nationals, most of the distance racing in Australia is 720. And maybe by shortening up the 766 to 720, we might attract a few more dogs.
How soon are we likely to see that here on this track then?
I'd be hoping the survey reports would be back next week, and then obviously with approval from GRNZ, as soon as we can get people nominating it, the sooner we'll start it.
Have you had any sort of feeling from the trainers? I mean, with the distance dogs, it does tend to be a relatively small group of trainers.
Well, it does. I mean, there's been people now quite keen on the 766. Haven't quite had enough dogs to card one of those, but I'll be fairly confident that maybe 720 could be the preference to 660.
So you still get some nominations for a 766 metre race any given Monday?
It's a matter of obviously the trainers communicating, and we're getting the odd 1 and 2, but obviously if we card a feature, people can see it for themselves, and then we'll think to nominate for it.
So that was Palmerston North Greyhound Racing Club President Paul Freeman, and we do thank him for giving us his time around this. And Rozzo, there was an AGM last night for the Palmerston North Greyhound Racing Club, and I understand there has been a little bit of information come out of that as well.
Yeah, there has, Andy. Paul Freeman reporting back from that AGM that the members that were there were happy to continue with the 410 metres. Now, this coming Sunday, they don't have the Monday meeting because, of course, Cambridge have their traditional Christmas Eve meeting there. So Palmerston North race on the Sunday, and they did call for nominations over the 375 metres as per what used to be normal 6-7 weeks ago. And they got 5 375 metre races. There is still a 410 metre race because that was still an option to nominate as well. And of course the other half of the card, 12 race card over the 457. However, out of the AGM last night and with the push of the GRNZ for 410 metres as well, it would appear that 410 metres will be the go going forward at Manawatu, and they will look to configure Box's track to create the fairest possible racing from the 410 metre mark. Of course, the other thing that came out just a couple of hours after that particular interview was that Big Time Bash's track record was broken, Andy, and it was broken by Big Time Pete, which we had a look at earlier in the show. Look, I think it's good that clubs review these things and look for the safest possible racing that their track does allow for, and that's what Manawatu have been going through the process of. And they're looking to be a bit innovative. And I also spent a few minutes with Paul talking about the Golden Chase, a new initiative around their the Gold Cup sort of tri-code carnival that's been established over the last couple of years, and that's at the end of March, Andy. And this year they've come up with something called the Golden Chase, and it is a match racing series based at Manawatu, a little bit similar to obviously the Amazing Chase, but based purely at the one track, although they are hoping that there'll be dogs from right around the country coming to that. And it's got a $28,000 stake and some bonuses attached to fastest opening sectional and closing sectional. So in the new year, we're off air for a couple of weeks, we will look to the Golden Chase and just sort of establish that and try and generate interest in that going towards the Gold Cup time at the end of March, which sounds a long way away, Andy, but frankly it isn't.
Exactly. It's really good to see a club showing a little bit of initiative too and trying to think outside the box, and Palmerston North are certainly doing that. Well, we are going to be off air for a couple of weeks, as Rozzo touched on, so we thought we'd throw together some DogZone dogs to follow. Rozzo, you might as well kick things away. Roman Nose Czar is the one you have gone with.
Yes, and I actually haven't talked to the camp at all about this dog, and the greyhound had been nominated and scratched, but it's a 36 kilo dog, and he won 8 in Australia. He 14 months ago ran 29.79 around Sandown. He's been 4 times placed 600 metres plus. Now he's in at Wanganui in a class 4 on Friday night, race 3 number 8. I don't know that he's necessarily suited out there, but he's in at Palmerston North box 4, race 12 on Monday, and I think he's going to be a dog worth following over the next month or so. Andy, you are with Tradition.
Yeah, I certainly am. He's a young dog from the Fahey team. He's had a couple of starts for 2 seconds, and gee, they've both been really big runs. First up, he was second in behind Ophelia Allen, who was Philippa Morris's dog to follow over the summer period, and she's looked very good as well, has Ophelia Allen. She was a winner again yesterday here in Christchurch. But, gee, that first up run of Tradition, he missed the start by 4 or 5 lengths, and he took considerable ground off her. And he's going to Cambridge for the 457-metre maiden event up there, and I think his future looks to be potentially over ground as he does get a little bit older, but gee, he's got a big future ahead of him, Tradition, and he's certainly one to keep an eye out over that series at Cambridge. Talking of upcoming races, here's a look at the canine calendar for some of the features while we are off air. We've got Palmerston North on the 23rd of December with a $20,000 pick 6, Rozzo, and I'm hoping you'll be able to tip the punters into that come that day.
I will do my very best, Andy. We haven't really been attracting enough money into those Sunday pick 6s at Manukau, so we really need to make an effort in January in the new year around that, because we want these pick 6s on greyhound racing. It lends itself to it beautifully, but we do need to generate more money into that. Andy, all the best to you and yours for Christmas, of course.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rozzo. It's always a good time of year. Of course, we've got the Cambridge Classic coming up as well, with heats on the 24th of December. And gee, with some of the young talent we do have around the country at the moment, that's certainly going to be a very nice event. Well, we're going to head back to you, Rozzo, and say a very Merry Christmas to you and your family. And you can always rely on you to make us have a laugh, Rozzo.
Well, as you can see, I'm not into family tradition, Andy, but I will be following Tradition over the next few weeks. But I do have one of my little Santa's helpers here today, so effectively we have had a live studio audience. So on behalf of the Rozadowski family, what are we going to say, Marco? Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas to you guys as well, Mark and Marco and your family, and we hope Santa's been good to you, Marco, and hopefully Daddy's got you a nice little puppy under the tree or something nice for Christmas. Well, that is it from us here at DogZone. We are taking a little bit of a break over Christmas and New Year, so Happy New Year and a Merry Christmas to everyone who does tune into the show. We hope it is a good one for you, and we'll be back in the new year with more reviews and previews of greyhound racing from around the country. But until then, happy punting.
Hooked on a feeling, I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. All the good love when we're all alone. Keep it up, girl. Yeah, you turn me on.